You loud. Hey, it is Friday. And
Friday,
September 15th. Man, where has the year gone? Right? Feels like it's been a crazy 18 months, but here we are, another episode of Go FUD Yourself, probably episode 175 or something.
God, I have no idea.
Honestly, I have no clue anymore. But it is FU Friday, so today we're going to talk about, a few different stories, and then
we're going to talk about the metaverse.
we're gonna talk about the metaverse a little
bit. We are only talking about the metaverse. Today is metaverse only. I have some big FUs to the metaverse, as you might have learned if you listened to our Tuesday episode where Christine and I got side-railed and derailed and argued about the metaverse for some time. But
sounds about right.
JD and I are going to talk about the metaverse, what it was designed for, what academics hope that it would be used for, how it existed. Well, we won't really talk about sci-fi. We don't have time to jump into that. But the social good element versus what's actually happening, aka surveillance capitalism. I'm going to be the funny one today. JD's going to have to try to reel me in. So we're going to talk about it a little bit in theory and a little bit about the history in the last couple of years of the metaverse. And then we'll actually go through some news from this week, such as if you use the Facebook metaverse, you now have legs.
Does anybody use the Facebook metaverse?
No.
But if you do, you have legs now. So that's exciting. All right. Quick reminder, we're a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're here all the time. Or a day, pretty much. And we are live. And you can tell that because we screw things up and say dumb shit all the time.
Anyways, what's on your shirt?
Quick shout out to our friends at Benki for another kind of stealth shirt. I feel like a bit of a ninja. I've got lots of lights in here so you can see it. But when you're outside, it's just kind of this little shimmery reflection. It's kind of cool.
I dig it. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, big fan. So shout out to our friends at Benki. And yeah, I think we can just get going.
We're gonna jump in.
Let's get into it. Yeah. Let's freaking go.
You didn't like our new video, hey? Ryan made us a new video a while ago.
Hold on. Oh, there we go. I got you back in my headset.
I like that every couple months, Ryan is like, we need a refresh.
We have a new video?
Yeah, I sent it to you like a month ago. But we're like stick figures. It's like another punky one. Yeah.
I don't remember.
I know you like this one. I know you bought the chain for it and everything.
Yeah, I did. I bought the pendant too, but it's
but it hasn't come.
It's ridiculous.
They have to literally forge it from gold. What do you want?
Yeah, somebody's there with a little gold and the whole thing. I don't know what the hell's going on.
They're gonna make a mold and pour it in and stuff.
It'll be exciting. Evie's probably listening and going, "What the hell are they talking about?" Evie, or good afternoon, I guess.
All right. The metaverse. So, okay, the topic today, in case you just tuned in, is that the metaverse was designed for social good, but it's actually used for surveillance capitalism, and I fucking hate it. That's what we're talking about. JD did not get prepped on this topic at all, so he's just going to stare at me mouth agape all episode. But
yeah,
okay,
I have a lot to say about this, but since
okay, awesome.
No, but first, you go first.
Well, I was going to run through kind of the social good component. So I am from a social good background. I'm from a background of nonprofits and academia. And, I like to pretend that the world's going to be okay, even though I also wear a tinfoil hat all the time. And so where I kind of started when I was looking into the metaverse and when we first heard about the metaverse is I did have that academic lens. How might we use the metaverse in classrooms? What kind of research is going to come out on it, that sort of thing. And so the concept of the metaverse from an academic perspective is that it can increase accessibility, diversity, and equality. And there's been quite a few studies that have been done, like actually academic studies. I'll post them up. This isn't like I watched something on TikTok and I'm saying that I read it, but there are quite a few studies that have been done showing how people can benefit through these interactions and through the infrastructure so that they have an intersection of their virtual world and physical world, and how the immersive user experience can kind of like onboard them to things like the blockchain while also allowing them to continue to exist in the physical world. But that's never what we see. But that's like the joy. That's the hope of the metaverse. Did you hope that for the metaverse when you heard about it? Were you like, yeah, accessibility and diversity?
No, I feel
Why
like
not?
this is like the largest game of bait and switch ever. I mean,
well, let's just talk about the good right now. Only the good.
The metaverse is like Facebook/Meta on steroids in terms of how they can monetize things in the metaverse.
No, we're talking about the good, only the good.
I know, but in order to kind of make that not the focal point of why they're doing it, they have to talk about all these other kind of initiatives and things. And so my father, for my entire life, I was like 3. He was a quadriplegic, so he was in a wheelchair. And to me, this is like incredibly disrespectful to people with disabilities, because it's really easy for us who's completely able-bodied to say, yeah, I'm sure it would feel good for them to walk around and have legs and do all this other shit that they can't do in the real world and meet girls with their fake avatars. I mean, people that are disabled probably don't go, oh, okay, well, my life is perfect now because I can walk in the metaverse. And so I have a weird FUD angle on this one, just because personally, in my personal life, I've lived this to a certain extent with a immediate family member. So I don't know. I think it could be cool. It's cool. And I think, if it was just one of the features and benefits of the metaverse, perfect. But to like lead with this being like metaverse for social good and inclusion and disability and diversity, it's just like, really? Like that's
okay. Positive news. We're doing positive news.
Oh, right. Positive.
We'll get to the fun, I promise.
Fine. I'll wait.
No, I actually agree with you, because I do think that it belittles the concept of both diversity and disability. And it only highlights how inequitable we are in our day-to-day lives, right? And I know that you're a meritocracy person. And even in that sense, like if somebody is a fantastic marketer, I don't care what their race is or what disability they have. And I don't need them to present as somebody else in the metaverse to believe in them, right? And it is disappointing to think that this is how people might want to use it, is to like almost falsify who they are. The other thing, just in terms of disability, before we move on from that, is that there have been a couple of studies done on how disability inclusive the metaverse actually is, and it super isn't. So although we have this like designed for accessibility, aside from actual physical disabilities like that, there's also really good issues for people with epilepsy, because there's not a lot of...
Your microphone just went completely bonkers.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
It's strange.
It has a different light on. Weird. But the concept is that, if you have epilepsy, or there were even studies done to show that people who are deaf are really challenged to exist in the metaverse, because we didn't design it with accessibility or diversity or equity in mind. We just designed it as the capitalist construct, and then we're like, oh, by the way, it could have social good. So I'm not totally sold on the academic perspective, but that was the hope and dream of it. The other component that people thought it would bring forward is the idea of affordability. So you might be able to afford a house and nest in it on the metaverse, where you might not be able to do that in real life. Or you might be able to participate in travel without actually traveling, kind of like what people were doing on Google Earth like 10 years ago.
Yeah, like I think, again, I think there is potentially some really cool value adds in some of those things, but if they're the primary focus, I think they're missing the mark. But those things are all cool. I think it's really neat to be able to experience things, especially once wearable tech gets to a better spot where you can mimic a lot of the sensations, which is the reason I do this, because I know that they already have gloves, and they're building like full body suits and stuff that will give you the sensory kind of impact of the metaverse, which would be really cool. All of this stuff is really cool, and I think it provides interesting outlets and unique experiences for people. I'm just not sure that I think that is the big value proposition of the metaverse. So I hope they add more to this narrative.
The other social good proposition of the metaverse does bring us a little bit towards capitalism, which is humanitarian support. So they're saying that via in-app purchases on the metaverse, that Xbox raised $144 million for the Ukraine. via in-game donations. Now, I'm not 100% sure that this needs to be attributed to the metaverse because we've seen Red Cross is accepting crypto. We've seen humanitarian NFTs, but apparently there is something to be said for the possibility of in-metaverse donations as well.
Yeah. I'm trying really hard not to be funny on this one, but like, it's amazing. It's amazing that they raised a bunch of money for Ukraine.
Sure. Right.
But I mean, that doesn't tell me why the metaverse is great. That just tells
exactly.
me that you have a captive audience and the ability to put this fucking donation thing in front of everybody all day, every day, which is what happened. I mean, maybe I don't know about the metaverse, but on Facebook proper, like there was donation, like every third freaking post was donate to Ukraine, like whatever. So anyways, I mean, again, I just think sometimes you got to take a minute and like kind of open up the crap a little bit, and then you'll see what's really going on. So that's where we're at.
I really struggle with the metaverse because I don't see a significant value add. Like if we were going to say that it was to improve accessibility for those with disabilities, then we would have designed with design justice in mind, as opposed to just fucking Facebook throwing up meta, right? And if we were actually designing for equity, there would probably be more anonymity. So like, I don't understand what the value add might be. But what Christine and I were talking about is that the metaverse is doing really well in Asia, even though we're not seeing a lot of usability here in North America. So I wonder what they know that we don't.
Yeah, I think it's also just a culture that is much deeper into the fantasy, you know, just like TV shows and books and a lot of the fiction that exists in Asian culture is kind of a fantasy nature. And so to me, it just makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of people in Asia that love that kind of shit. And most of the metaverse-esque, you know, protocols and games and different things are playing into that. I mean, makes sense. Well,
now we can get funny because the real only value add that the metaverse seems to have is surveillance capitalism. I'm not a super big fan of any sort of consumerism capitalism, which is super fun to say in crypto, but I often wonder, like, what are you doing in the metaverse? How are you participating? What does it look like? And the answer is that it's basically just fragmented shopping and trade and having people watch you shop and trade and emote via those shopping and trading moments. So surveillance capitalism from Meta is kind of my FUD take here.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the CBDCs. I mean, it's, you know, here, look at this while over here we do this.
Exactly.
And that's been my issue with big tech and the centralization of data and the centralization of user data in these massive multinational companies, I think is, I don't know, they have a hell of a lot of power and a hell of a lot of influence, and I hate it. The metaverse, to me, last cycle was all the rage, right? Decentraland and Sandbox or whatever the fuck all these different places were called. And in the end, none of them really stuck, because building a metaverse, as evidenced by the whatever $100 billion or some nonsense that Meta put into their metaverse to not even have legs, and like it to be like super cartoony and not that amazing. And then you need the Oculus headset and like all this other shit. Like it's a real thing. And so
when it came out and there was that ad with Mark Zuckerberg eating dry toast.
Yeah. But
that was my favorite part.
There was Zuck that was like in this green field with the Eiffel Tower in the background. You remember that shit?
That's right.
It was just like, okay, like what? Anyway, so this is just one of those things that's been like all bark and no bite so far. So I'm also somewhat jaded. And so without that like incredible quality and draw for users to come in, I don't know. I think it's a whole lot about nothing right now. Like if there was hundreds of millions of users and there was then some, you know, capitalistic tendencies for oversight, fine. But when there's 100,000 users and all it is data mining and the experience isn't there, what the hell's to motivate people to do it? anyways.
So there's a lot of op-eds on this. If you want to kind of dive into that, Open Democracy has a number of them about the dystopian future of fragmented reality. So if you really want to do a deep dive, if you want to put your tinfoil hat on with us, I'll post some of those and you can take a look at them, but I'm not going to force them up on you. However, something that is interesting about the metaverse in terms of shopping and trading is that a survey was done in Germany, and over half of respondents were familiar with the term of metaverse, and about a quarter of them had participated in the metaverse, with about 8% making purchases in the metaverse. And like, I'm just honestly not sure what there is to purchase in the metaverse that I couldn't purchase otherwise, I guess. And I see this being just like another form of omnichannel marketing that we're trying to get users to adopt because we put something there, as opposed to going to our shoppers or our users, right? And so we're like, if you want to participate, you're going to have to onboard, whereas what we actually would want is people have already onboarded and then we go to them and meet them there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a decade from now, we'll see AR, VR,
for sure,
parallel realities that are sensory, that are accurate from a sensory perspective, and so on. But we've got a long ways from a tech perspective to get there, in my opinion. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how this all plays out. I don't know. There's a lot of money being spent on the metaverse, though. I don't know.
So just to kind of like wrap up with the concept of surveillance capitalism, if you aren't super familiar with the term surveillance capitalism, the idea kind of came about when we started having more targeted ads with Google. Do you remember when you sent Google emails and it would send you ads based on your email content?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My brother and I used to just type random words in and that were like really varied and see what would come up. So we would be like, penguins in a forest fire, and then like see what they were going to advertise to us. Because I'm that many years old.
But I mean, if you look at, I was reading an article the other day on, what is it? League of Legends, which is what SBF was all about. And I was like, what the hell is this League of Legends? Like, how can he be so obsessed with it? Anyways, it was established a long ass time ago, like 2004 or something. And it was one of the first free to play games where they only monetized things that didn't matter, which on the surface sounds crazy. But if you look at Fortnite and Roblox in many ways, all of the things that V-Bucks and Robux do for you don't actually change your character statistics in the game. You look different. It's all cosmetic. And so the metaverse, I think, is going to have so many monetization opportunities. Like, of course, we all talk about the like Louis Vuitton in there, and you're going to buy a Louis Vuitton bag. You'll get a metaverse version and a real life version, whatever. But there's so many other versions of how you can monetize the metaverse without having to buy physical products that I think will open a totally new dimension of an economy. But it's just that transition to critical mass, I think, is what's really important. We're seeing a lot of people try to like land grab and whatever, take revenue off the table as much as they can. But I think we first need to focus on scale before we start figuring out how to gate everything. But just my opinion.
Yeah, I'm here with you for that. In terms of surveillance capitalism, people are also very afraid of kind of the next steps. Like you were talking about how they have the gloves and that kind of thing, which will be able to, so they call them neural, it's neural data. And they're concerned that people will actually be able to see things like your heart rate and your body temperature and that kind of thing to discern what you're looking at when, and that will become new consumer data aside from just our click-through rates and what have you. So people are concerned about, the concept of a new era of surveillance capitalism. If you already don't like that you think your phone is listening to you, you probably won't like when your phone knows how fast I guess with wearables, actually, that's already kind of a thing, but...
Well, the other thing is like whether you like it or not, it's happening.
It is happening.
Every aspect of your life. Like we could stress about it or just be aware of it. But it's happening with your phone, with all of your Wi-Fi connected devices in your house. Like everything is reporting data. That data is being sold and monetized, and it's being turned around and used as ways to get you to buy more shit. So.
I went to a cybersecurity summit about like 5 or 6 years ago. And that was actually the primary topic of the cybersecurity summit was, yes, we know that you don't want this to happen to you. We know that you don't want to get scammed. We know that you don't want to have data breaches. But what we're here to say is that it will happen and you should be prepared for it. And so I feel like that's the same here with the metaverse is like you will have privacy breaches. You will have personal security breaches. you're going to end up with a wearable at some point. Like at some point, you're not going to be able to buy a watch that doesn't have trackers in it, right? So what does that mean to you? How can you participate in it safely? And how can you ensure that you don't kind of go down the rabbit hole too far to a place that you're not comfortable, right?
Absolutely. I think you just need to be aware of what your exposure is. I'm not sure that the metaverse increases that exposure much from what we already have, I guess, is my point. But all right.
So
what's next?
Are you ready for metaverse news? This
Yeah.
is all opinion. Now we get news.
And we're out of time. So all that matters is opinion.
We've got 10 minutes. Come on.
Okay.
All right.
Let's
So
go.
China has launched a 3-year plan, including like Chinese government ministries to decide how they're going to use the metaverse. So they have a few different objectives, including 3D interactive metaverses and secure governance frameworks of metaverses. Metaverse. What are we saying for plural?
I don't know. Metaverse.
Well, they want it to be a key growth sector in China's digital economy for education, tourism, manufacturing, and they hope to be the world-leading ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean, I think them and everybody else wants to be a leader in both AI, blockchain, and virtual reality. And you combine AI, blockchain, and VR, and you get metaverse effectively. And so I think this is great to see large areas of the world with great populations and deep pockets investing in and supporting this type of growth. Again, my only reluctance here and the slight FU to China is if China becomes a world leader, I surely don't want China having my data.
Well, that sucks for you.
So, it sucks for me. But yeah, so I mean, this is good, but at the same time, I really hope to see some global focus on this type of technology, which I think is happening. I mean, the investment dollars in VR and blockchain last cycle was astronomical. This cycle, from an investment perspective, AI is all the rage. There's a lot of capital floating around globally. I think we'll see some pretty interesting movement if somebody figures out a solution, which currently they have.
This next one's a little bit funny because I actually only included it because it's a Forbes article, which is Unlocking the Metaverse, 4 Ways It Will Revolutionize Business Operations. So when I was looking for metaverse news, Forbes has a lot of filler news about the metaverse that comes out every week, like almost 3 articles a week. We often look at Forbes as somebody who's going to be an indicator of trends or an indicator of how legitimate something is, something to that end. But they don't really have any new information on the metaverse. And that's something that I would challenge you, if you are interested in the metaverse, to try to consider, because they basically said the 4 ways that it will revolutionize business operations are selling and marketing, customer support, remote work, and HR processes. And I'm kind of like, well, thanks. Thanks for the article.
Yeah, I'm not sure that this is like the zero. Again, I feel like this is not what we should be focused on because it's not super exciting. As in terms of attracting new users, I don't want to know that my participation just means you have way more ways to make money off me. I mean, right. Yeah, we all kind of understand that, but I don't want that to be, the narrative that I'm supposed to be attracted to, because I'm not attracted to, hey, use this so we can advertise to you in a better, more efficient
Do you like the narrative of say goodbye to clunky Zoom meetings?
No, because this is probably worse than Zoom meetings. Everybody needs to have like there's actually some really cool technologies, and Meta has focused quite a bit actually on being able to do kind of this VR AR meeting thing. Yeah. And it's actually pretty compelling, but everybody needs a $3,000 headset and all this other nonsense.
Well, actually, we're going to jump down a couple, but the Metaverse is looking at ways that users will be able to access Meta Quest via mobile app and web browser, because no one can afford Oculus.
Well, yeah. And I mean, there's all this speculation about augmented reality and eventually thinking that we'll all be walking around with AR goggles on and I'll see you in your metaverse clothes instead of your real clothes or whatever. I mean,
I'm gonna wear pajamas forever.
Yeah, that'll be cool, but it's gonna be a long ways until we see people walking around with AR goggles on, I think.
I don't know if it's that far, because the metaverse now has legs. So we're at least taking a step in the right direction.
We're pretty much there.
I want to think like that. That was so good. Give me some credit for that pun.
That was good. It was good.
Literally this week, if you are a Metaverse user, now you can have a full body reflection in a mirror and you can walk around using legs instead of being a weird floating torso. Congratulations.
Sign me up.
Before we move too far from Metaverse, I do also want to talk about how Yuga Labs hates Meta. So they believe that Meta ruined the term Metaverse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they ruined the term Metaverse. I think Meta essentially changing the name to Meta just implied like macro, not just Metaverse. I think Yuga's just annoyed because that's another Metaverse. The Bored Apes Metaverse that was supposed to be this big thing, and I think they're realizing, actually not I think they're realizing, I know they're realizing that it's way more expensive and way more demanding of resources and expertise than anybody thinks. Again, as evidenced by the $100 billion spent by Facebook Meta, and they just got legs.
I can't believe legs were the holdback. Okay, let's move on to Metaverse in industry a little bit, just to kind of get through that. So Metaverse in education is something that seems to be actually going really well. They say that VR learners are 150% more engaged in the content and 40% more confident in applying what they've learned. I actually have some experience with this. When I was working at Northwest College, I was in charge of all of our VR, and we developed with a third party. We developed a nursing program for virtual reality where you basically had to pass your textbook and then you had to pass the virtual reality simulation before you could go into hospital. And part of the reason was that people had a really difficult time taking their textbook knowledge and then remembering everything they had to do in real life. Things like as simple as remembering to wash your hands, right? If you're a brand new student and you're really nervous, you're thinking, oh, I have to give this injection. You're probably not thinking about washing your hands. And so it was all of these like really small steps that people had to get in the habit of doing. And after they were able to perform X many simulations without mistakes, then they were able to go into lab, which is kind of an interesting way to go about it. But I didn't need the Metaverse for that. It was just VR.
Yeah, I think there is some really cool educational applications. There's really interesting training for first responders, for military, for many things that you want to simulate quite dangerous environments and don't want to do that in real life. Right. I think there's some really cool applications, but we are so freaking far from it being real enough. What's really cool, and I suppose a larger scale parallel is flight simulators. Flight simulators now are half real life and half kind of VR, and they're pretty compelling. Like they give now with the way that they move and the airflow and different things, it actually it tricks your body into feeling like it's real. I think we're going to need that in the Metaverse for people to really be immersed in the technology. But I guess we'll find out.
Banks are kind of pulling out of the Metaverse. That is in terms of investment, not in terms of use within their companies. Maybe they're still doing, I don't know, VR meetings. I don't know what they're doing. But originally, City Report said that the Metaverse economy could be worth up to 13 trillion by 2030. And now basically UK banks are saying that there are more pressing investments to be made, and they're pulling out of their Metaverse investments. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the Metaverse clearly was a bubble last cycle. The tech isn't ready. There was a lot of promises that unfortunately weren't delivered upon the way that people expected. And now investors are going, wait a second, I'm not going to throw good money after bad just to fund R&D, which is essentially what's happening. So.
And then the final industry that we'll touch on before we go is manufacturing. I think this is kind of what you were just saying about how sometimes things are dangerous, or sometimes we have these really intricate pieces to trade on. And they believe that industrial manufacturers are going to embrace these immersive experiences, and that by 2025, 20% of global 2000 manufacturers will integrate industrial metaverse for advanced simulation and collaboration. That seems soon.
I would be surprised if it's that soon, but I can imagine a time where the way that we run things in test environments from a software perspective now, you can actually run more mechanical things and toggle tons of environmental influences in a metaverse that you can't really do elsewhere. So there's some really cool stuff that you can do for testing and R&D for manufacturing, as well as training and all that kind of stuff. So I think in that regard, I would be surprised if it was as early as 25, but
Me too.
I'd be happy to see it.
There are all of this to say, obviously I'm really FUDdy on the metaverse. I don't love it. I don't know how you feel about it, JD, but there are still some investments and some things that are moving forward. If you want to check out some of the other news from this week, Animoca Brands secured 20 million for their Mochaverse project, and Avakin Life with Planet Play decided to do some sort of green initiative within a metaverse. So there is good news if you're super bullish on the metaverse, but I'm not.
Yeah, I'm gonna end the call today by saying F you to the metaverse. I'm FUDdy on the metaverse only because, again, I said this earlier in the pod, but it was a lot of bark and very little bite.
Yeah.
And for that reason, I'm disappointed.
And capitalism.
But surveillance capitalism. But I mean,
that's just capitalism.
But like, there's a lot of promise, I think, for what the metaverse can and will be. I just think we're a little ways away, and we were sold a bill of goods that implied something otherwise last cycle. So with that, I say F you. F you metaverse. Yeah. All right. We are a live show Monday to Friday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. We're on all the major platforms. We don't commercialize the show, so please help us get
send
the word
me a
out.
T-shirt though.
Spread the love. Yeah. Somebody send Ceara some merch. I get all the merch. I get all the merch. And I understand that I got to make up for this by having merch. So I understand why people send it to me, not you. But, one of these days you'll get something. Anyways, all of that to say, have a great weekend. It's going to be a beautiful weekend in most of America anyways. So have a good weekend. We got you covered.
Except for the hurricane.
Hurricane, schmurricane. But yeah, we've got you covered for the weekend. So go touch some grass, hang out with your family, and we'll be back on Monday with the weekend roundup. Ceara, I say to you, go FUD yourself.